Hi, my name's Aston. I'm probably best known for being in an 80s pop group called Bucks Fizz. Had lots of hits, and some of you might remember the song Making Your Mind Up, bit of a skirt ripping routine. And I've been performing ever since. And the highlight of my life, obviously winning Eurovision was something quite special, but the big highlight in my life was having a daughter. Da-da! And here is Josie, my 20,
Hi, I'm
20-year-old.
Josie. I'm best known for being her child. I'm also probably best known for having meningitis. Not sure how those two pair up that well, but anyway, I had meningitis back in March of
Last year.
21.
22. Yeah.
Was it 22?
It's 23 now, and it was last March. That's 22.
Shows I know my years very well. March of 22, and I was hospitalised for a month, and I lost an extreme amount of my kidney function. And I was also left with some necrosis scarring on my body. I'll give you an example. Can you see her there? She's nice. So how it was first detected was actually this lovely lady right here. I felt really poorly. In the daytime, I'd been sunbathing and I started to shake uncontrollably. So we thought I had sunstroke, and I thankfully decided I couldn't be bothered to go into my own bedroom, so I stayed in her bed overnight. And at 3 a.m. in the morning, I rolled around and I said, "Oh, Mum, I don't feel well at all." She thankfully decided to turn on all the lights, and I had 3 tiny little deep purple dots right here, which then later turned into that. And she rushed me to A&E, thankfully.
We were lucky. I do think that if we had waited another 20 minutes, half an hour, she wouldn't be here right now. It was really, really a close call. So the bizarre thing is my husband had meningitis 20 years prior, and Josie was the silver lining of my husband having meningitis, and he had a slightly different version of it, but they were both deadly and bacterial. So I had a little bit of experience about diagnosing meningitis, and I actually knew about that from an old boyfriend. And I often wondered why I went out with him. But anyway, so the main thing is that, there's different forms of meningitis. Is there 7 versions or 8 versions?
I thought it was 10.
Well, there's viral and then there's bacterial. Viral you can recover from. Bacterial can kill you very quickly. And so there's not a lot of information out there about how to diagnose it. And there are slightly different symptoms. So my husband he couldn't bear the light. He couldn't open his eyes. He'd been throwing up. He had a very high temperature, but he just wanted to go to bed with a paracetamol. And fortunately, I did the glass trick, which on his version was really obvious. He had a red rash, just little red dots, a bit like you get from sunstroke. And I put a glass over his chest, and the red dots don't disappear. So then I knew it was meningitis. I rushed him to hospital, and he was in hospital for 2 weeks. With Josie, they looked like a Dalmatian spot. They were like 3 little black dots.
Very deep black purple dots.
And a very high temperature, which I couldn't get down with either Nurofen or paracetamol, the normal things you'd rotate. And she'd been clearly unwell. I actually thought she had flu before I saw the dots in the arm. And then when I saw the dots in the arm, I was like, get in the car. We had actually phoned for an ambulance, and we'd been waiting for 6 hours and nothing had arrived. And I'd sort of been thinking, oh, if we go to A&E and the ambulance turns up, then we wasted their time. But it was, once I saw the spots, it was like, get in the car, let's go. And we had to kind of negotiate with the guy on the door. Eventually he pushed her through, and
unfortunately a lot of hospitals do misdiagnose meningitis.
Yeah.
So I definitely recommend to Google the signs and be aware of them yourself, so you know what you are looking for, so you can hopefully try and push people in the right direction when you do get into hospital.
So within about half an hour of her going in through to the doctors, she was completely covered in the rash. At that point, my husband had arrived. I'd been trying to park the car. They would only let one person in, and then they let me in, and you were in a very poorly way. You already had, they put some antibiotic through her in case, and they'd already pretty much
my blood was too thin already for a spinal tap.
Yeah.
They basically said it's definitely meningitis and we don't need to test it.
But fortunately there was a lovely lady doctor, and she was almost on site. So she just literally came from her flat literally over the road. and she'd seen meningitis before. It's quite a rare thing. So whilst Josie was really ill, and by 11 o'clock the next morning, we were given 50-50 that she would survive. And she had to try and go through that next night before they could put her into the coma, because they had to go through all these different sort of rituals and stuff before they are allowed to put her into a coma, which is where she was in a coma for 5 days. But so yeah, it was a weird time, wasn't
I
it?
really don't remember those few days.
But you
I had
did
about 3 or 4
incredibly
flashes
well.
of that time.
She was cracking jokes literally up to the last moment, weren't you? You were
Yeah, I
going
do
on-
remember that.
You were going on. She was really being really humorous, and the nurses, I've got to say, in A&E were spectacular, and the doctors, they saved her life. There was
Yeah.
one guy called Harvey. Was it Harvey?
Harvey.
He literally, the machines that are, they're like a dialysis machine where they
Called a
clean the
filter.
blood. They don't work very well. I mean, they're the newfangled thing, but they are known to just stop, because the minute you move, it can trigger them.
Within the pipes of like blood, obviously this is my coma brain talking, so this probably isn't very scientific. When the blood starts to clot, it clogs up the pipes, and they have to completely remove the whole machine off of you and clean it out. So just if you like move and the flow of blood slows down, it starts to clot. The pipes get clogged.
They have
It
to
just
change
stops.
the whole thing. So you lose a lot of your own blood
Stuck in the machine.
and then they have to give you a transfusion. So I think you had about 13 transfusions.
Yeah.
But she said it was coming up to Mother's Day, and it was bizarre because I haven't really told you this, but my mum was in that ward. I lost my mum in that ward on Mother's Day, and she said, because she knew that was meant something to me. So you said, "Don't worry, Mum, I'll be awake by Mother's Day," and I was like, "Yeah, you're going to be awake by Mother's Day," but you weren't.
And I wasn't.
No, you weren't. But they'd obviously stopped. They were happy with her progress to the point where they stopped the medication, so they were hoping she was going to wake up. But you didn't wake up for a couple of days, and those were really tough days. The first day there was no movement at all, and then you started to twitch a bit. Your feet were moving a little bit. There was suddenly a little bit of movement, a little flicker of the eyes, and we were like, she's moving. And it was tough. And fortunately, I was allowed to stay most of the time. I just come home for 2 or 3 hours of a break and get some food, and then be back early in the morning. And my husband was on tour to begin with, and then towards the end he came back, and that was great because I had a little bit more time to sleep and stuff. But you were fast asleep for 5 days, and then the week after was really tough.
Then I didn't go to sleep for another like week.
Yeah, you couldn't sleep.
I lost the concept of why we sleep. I was so out of it. I was like, why do we need to sleep? What's the point of it? I don't need to sleep.
It's quite normal, apparently, when you've been in a coma to have these really weird visions, and so
you lose concept of day and night.
Yeah, because you've been asleep and stuff. I think it's something to do with your body clock. But she was incredible all the time. The nurses were incredible, and all I can say is that virus is out there, and we think you got it from a bar. So she just went out with her mates over that weekend. It was either in a bar or
it could have been from anywhere. There's no anything.
We don't know.
It's obviously the way it's transferred is through droplets, and so mainly you'd think like sharing a drink, kissing someone,
or even
sharing
someone
food.
Sneezing.
But I didn't kiss anyone. I didn't share anyone's drink. I can't remember if anyone sneezed near me, to be honest. But there's no like key point where I'm like, well, that's where I got it.
I think the most important thing is to be aware of the symptoms, and if mostly the temperature doesn't go down, get to A&E.
If you know the symptoms, you're equipped, because then you can go into A&E and say, I think I have meningitis, and that cuts the work for them a little bit if you're researched on it.
Yeah. The guy on the door, I think he was probably a volunteer. Obviously, he was like, I came in. Fortunately, there was an ambulance man having a sandwich, and he went, yes, I think you're right. I think this looks like meningitis. He pushed her in to the waiting area, and he was like, we had to convince him. And the only thing that convinced him was I said loudly so he could hear, because he was being a bit weird with us. I said, well, the last time we pushed Daddy into A&E, he was on a drip within 8 minutes. And that made him like go, okay, I'll push her through now. There was 10 minutes lost, 15 minutes lost waiting for him to decide to push her through. Anyway, but you're here, and she's made incredible progress. So her kidney function went down to kind of 0. Then it hovered at 6%. Then it went up a little bit every month, didn't it? And now the last reading was 24%.
24. But that was a few months ago, so we're hoping it's higher now.
So hopefully by the time you see this, it might be approaching 30%, which is amazing in just over a year. And we just hope it keeps going in the right direction. And we're just going to take it day by day. And every day I have my daughter is a wonderful day. So hopefully this has been helpful. And
any questions, please message us on social media. Go for it.
Just be positive. I really believe being positive
One
helps.
thing, when I was in hospital and just come out of the coma, I could hardly hold my phone, and Mum had given me my phone. And I attempted to type into like Instagram and TikTok meningitis, because I didn't want to feel like I was the only one going through it. I don't know what I put in my phone. It was obviously some absolute babble, because nothing relevant came up. But you know, if you do know someone who's going through anything to do with meningitis, they're in hospital at the minute, please show them some resources so they understand what's going through for them. I feel like personally there was so much going on in ICU. Everyone was fighting to keep me alive. I never really found out what was actually happening. I think people were kind of trying to protect me, but in hindsight, I would have preferred to be more informed on what was going on. And so if you do know anyone, please show them some online resources. There's plenty, especially through, you know, this charity. It does help. It really does.
It does. It's a rotter. Josie actually had her vaccinations when she was young, but we think we missed one because you'd already left school.
There was a vaccine that came out in 2019, which is a 6-in-1 meningitis vaccine, and I cannot implore you enough to get it if you haven't got it already. Pro-vaccine or not, get the meningitis one. It's a nasty, nasty thing.
And hopefully this has helped. Bye.